Happy holidays, Uttori Zoku. This is Imari from Always Uttori. On this channel, we cover fashion, food, and lifestyle. Back in July, we presented 4 Always Uttori color stories with corresponding aesthetics in our teddy bear wreath and Christmas color trends video. Today, we're covering DIYs inspired by the lavender and seafoam green color story we shared in that video. We chose a French provincial or old world decor style to inform our color story. If you would like a refresher on this color story and style, be sure to check out the Christmas color trend video. Finally, if you missed our French provincial Christmas vignette video, where we show you how all of the DIYs come together to create a beautiful Christmas theme, then make sure to watch that video after this one. And as always, you can find more detailed posts on the projects we share here on our website, also linked in the description box. Best of all, we'll be sharing several free images that we used in today's projects for you to download from our website. With that, it's time to create some enchantment. Our first project is a rustic wood box to hold a floral arrangement for the holiday table. When I was looking for inspiration on Pinterest, I came across this picture of a rustic box holding fresh lavender and kept my eye out for a similar box when thrifting. I came across this one at Goodwill for $4.99. I used low grit sandpaper to remove the printed on words and then gave the rest of the box a quick sanding to allow for a more rustic and natural appearance. I used Cricut Design Space to type the phrase Joyeux Noël, or Merry Christmas in French. I used one of Cricut's free fonts, Only Extra Bold. I measured the length of my box and sized the words to fit across it. I cut out the words on a scrap piece of removable smart vinyl, but I've seen others use permanent vinyl, and there are also vinyls made specifically for stencils. My Cricut messed up the cut a little bit, but because it was a stencil, it didn't cause too many problems. I weeded the stencil and then arranged it on the box. Next, I layered a thin coat of Mod Podge. This helps to stop paint bleeding through the edges of the stencil, although I still had a little bit of bleed through. I let the Mod Podge dry before painting. I wanted to have an old worn paint effect with layers of color in lavender and seafoam, so I started with an acrylic paint that I got from Dollar Tree. The purple and green weren't quite the right shades, but I'm going to cover them with black and then sand down to get some colors to show through, so I don't think it matters too much. After the purple dried, I repeated the process with green, and then finally, I used black chalk paint and did 2 coats. I let it dry, then peeled off the vinyl. I lightly sanded the letters to give it a worn and weathered look and to reveal some of the paint underneath. I sanded around where there was some paint bleed through and also used a damp paper towel to wipe down the surface after sanding. I didn't get a video that shows off the colors underneath, so here are 2 pictures where you can better see the colors poking through. The green showed up more on the Joyeux and the purple more on the Noël. Overall, I think the green showed up best, as the purple ended up melding in with the black a bit more. And here is the final arrangement, which you can see me build out in our French Provincial Christmas video, linked in the description box. The next project is a set of lavender dinner plates. Working with the theme of lavender and seafoam, I knew I wanted lavender plates of some kind. I didn't see anything I liked available to buy, so I figured if I thrifted some glass plates, I could paint the backside of the plates purple and they would still be food safe. I thrifted these lovely plates at Goodwill for $3.99 a piece. They had a slight blue tint, which I think further enhanced the lavender shade I painted them. I made sure the plates were clean and then spray painted the backside with a couple coats of lavender spray paint in the color French lilac. Then I covered it with a clear gloss coat to help protect the paint from scratching off. I would be wary of washing these in the dishwasher and would recommend hand washing if you plan to try something similar. This is how the plates ended up looking in the final place setting. I think the lavender really popped against the seafoam placemat and silver chargers and brought the whole look together. Next, we're making paper ornaments. Paper ornaments are really popular this year and are available for purchase from many different brands for a range of prices. I wanted to try my hand at making them myself, especially since I was working with a specific color theme. I started in Cricut Design Space and selected the half circle shape from the Shapes tab. I changed the height to be 3 inches. You can make yours bigger or smaller depending on how you want it to look. Variations in sizes might also look nice. I made 5 copies, using the guides in the program to figure out how many would fit on an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of cardstock. I made sure they were evenly spaced by using the alignment tool, then made 3 rows. I selected all of the half circles and then clicked the attach button on the bottom right so that Cricut would cut them as one sheet rather than individually. Then I clicked Make It to send it to the Cricut. I ended up making 4 in this style. If you want to make multiple cuts at once, you can adjust the copies to the amount you want to cut and hit Apply. I used a cardstock with a weight of 176 GSM and chose the medium cardstock cutting option. Feel free to adjust to the paper you're using. A word of caution, I tried this on a thicker specialty cardstock and it was too rigid. You'll need some flexibility for this to work, so look out for that when choosing paper. To make the ornament, I used Mod Podge and a paintbrush to paint a thin line down the center of the first sheet. Lay the next sheet on top and align so that they're flush with each other. Press for a few seconds and then place 2 dots of glue on the outer corners of the second sheet. Press for a few seconds. Now you can see how this begins to create a honeycomb pattern. Repeat this process alternating between the 2 patterns until all of your sheets are attached. Each sheet gave me 15 half circles total, although you'll notice that a few of my circles were a little shorter than the others. My paper was just about 1/4 inch short of being able to fully fit 15 half circles, so I fudged it a little. It's not an issue since the main connection point is further out. 15 sheets is the amount I went with, although you could add more or less to your ornament. The more sheets you have, the more intricate the design will be. I found that between 12 and 20 sheets worked well, and an even number probably works best. I think because I had an uneven number, when it was time to connect both sides of the ornament together, I had to connect it with the same glue pattern as both sides, so the seams ended up not having an uninterrupted pattern, which you'll see later. When you've finished, glue the back of the sheets together to help keep them secure. Cut a length of twine or string as an ornament hanger. I cut mine at about 5 inches. Make a loop and glue both ends to the sheets. Let dry for a few minutes, then glue the 2 ends of the ornament together, ideally using a glue pattern that is opposite of the 2 ends. Press and hold for around 30 seconds and voila! I wanted to say that while having a Cricut makes this a lot easier, you can also do this by hand if you don't have a Cricut. You can use a can or other object to draw a half circle and cut out the shapes, then follow the same steps. Alright, now we're on to our other ornament shape. Rather than varying sizes, I varied shapes and colors. Did you notice that the paper I cut out were varying shades of purple? To create a long ornament, I selected a circle and 2 triangles in Cricut Design Space. I arranged them until they formed a seamless oblong shape, then selected the Combine button and united the shapes. Next, I resized the shapes to be 4 inches in height. I selected a square shape and aligned the outer edge with the center of the ornament. I clicked the Slice button and chose Exclude to remove the other half of the shape. While you can use a full shape, the process is slightly different and adds a few steps. After that, same as the other ornament, I copied the shapes until I had enough to fill the page. I was able to fit 16 on the page by arranging 2 more shapes horizontally on the bottom. I cut out 8 ornaments because we're going to double this one up for a total of 32 sheets per ornament. I tried attaching the sheets with hot glue because I thought it might be a little faster, but I thought the result was messy, so I went back to Mod Podge. The pattern for this one is similar to the half circle. Start with one glue dot on the outer center of the ornament. Then, on the second sheet, do 2 glue dots on both ends of the ornament. Repeat until all the sheets are attached. Here's where this ornament differs from the circle ornament. Instead of gluing both ends together, we're going to complete another set of 16 sheets, following the same process. So now that we have 2 sets of 16 for a total of 32, we're going to attach them together. Depending on how you've done yours, attach with the glue pattern that is the next in the sequence of whatever side you're attaching the next set to. For me, this was 2 glue dots at both ends. Press and let dry for a few seconds. From here, the rest is the same. Add glue to the back side of the sheet, cut a length of twine and attach it to the center, then glue the ornament together with the appropriate glue pattern. What I like about these ornaments is that they look more complicated than they are to make. They do take a bit of time, but once you get the hang of it, making them goes by quickly. They bring an elegance and simplicity to any holiday decor, and they're actually pretty fun to make. Okay, we're on to our next project, clay ornaments. I was inspired by this ornament I saw on Pinterest from Home Branded, which was selling a set of 6 for $54. I also saw some glass ornaments on Pottery Barn that had a worn and rustic look. Clay ornaments might seem difficult on the surface, but they're actually pretty easy. I started with 2 finial-shaped styrofoam ornaments I found around the house, as well as round styrofoam balls I got from a craft supply store. You'll also need air-dry clay for this project. Start by taking some of the clay and use your fingers to smooth it around the ornament surface. You can also use some water to help smooth out the rough edges. Keep adding clay and smoothing until the ornament is covered completely. For this first ornament, I waited until after I had covered it to add the string, but I think it's best to add it before covering in clay so it will be secured underneath that layer. I'll show that process later. Regardless, to add the string, cut the length you want and then poke a hole in the top of the ornament with the back of a paintbrush or something thin and sharp enough to get into the styrofoam. Add a bit of glue. I used B7000, but any kind will work. Then add your string. While it's drying, be careful not to pull it out or jostle it too much, as you'll have to reattach it later, which may be difficult when the clay is dry. If you don't want fingerprints or for it to be so rough, you can go back and smooth down with more water after the ornament is covered, but the uneven and textured surface plays into the rustic appeal of this ornament style. Once the ornament base is covered, it's time to add some embellishments. You can use whatever mold shapes you want, but since the theme is French provincial, I went with ones that looked a little more ornate and French-like. I think I got this mold from Amazon, but there are plenty of molds available online with different shapes for you to choose from. When working with smaller molds, especially ones with finer details, the clay can sometimes stick and be hard to get out, so you can use cornstarch to help release the clay. I used a paintbrush to lightly coat the mold before pressing the clay in. I used scissors to cut away excess clay and then pressed the shape into the ornament. Use your fingers and water to blend the shape into the ornament base. I found that the back of a paintbrush worked well to get into the corners and blend the clay together. Press another piece of clay into the same mold and attach it to the back of the ornament. Here's the process for attaching the string before putting the clay on. It's the same as before, but having the clay on top adds some extra security and looks more finished. After that, it's the same process. I used a different mold shape for this one and attached it in the same way. The process is the same for the round ornaments, except I added a few additional embellishments to these because they were larger in size and I felt like it needed more. Once you've finished, let them dry. This can be a little difficult as the clay can be a bit sticky and the side you lay it on becomes flat. I ended up resting them in the plate I put the cornstarch on and moving them when I remembered to. If you're able to hang them, I think that would be the best method for drying them as you don't have to contend with flat spots. But for me, my glue hadn't set yet, so I didn't hang them until I painted them. If you catch it before it fully dries, you can smooth out some of the flat spots. I let mine air dry for 24 hours. To paint them, I used Rust-Oleum spray paint and Coastal Sage. But because I didn't want full coverage, I sprayed a small amount in a cup. I only had plastic on hand, but paper would be better because the spray paint eats through plastic over time, so you have to be careful with that. Also make sure you're in a well-ventilated area or have your windows open when doing this. I went for a rustic application, so didn't worry about getting every nook and cranny. I actually liked it with just the green, but went ahead and added some hints of purple on the relief. For that, I used some acrylic paint I got from Dollar Tree mixed with white so it would be more of a lavender color. I added some touches of brown in the corners of the relief to give it more of an aged look. Finally, I added some gold metallic paint mixed with a little bit of water on the relief to create the quintessential French provincial tension of opulence and rusticity. This is how they turned out, and of course you can see how they looked on the tree in our French provincial Christmas video. The next project is filigree bird chair hangers. I saw this awesome video by Turtle Soup Crafts here on YouTube where she made filigree hearts using disposable materials and clay. I thought it would be a great project to try in the shape of a bird. This project is perfect to do around the holidays when you're getting all of your gifts in because it uses materials you would often throw away. I saved plastic mailers and packaging materials, but you can use any kind of paper, wrappers, or other disposable materials you have around. It's hard to say how much you'll need, but I didn't use all of the stuff I saved for the project. To start, we need to form the materials into the shape of a bird. I folded up a small plastic mailer into a rectangle and layered with other things until it was the size I wanted. I added another piece to act as the head and used my fingers to shape it into a bird, which can be thought of as a rounded head that flows into a rounded chest, tapering into a narrow tail. Make adjustments as you go by adding pieces to help you get to the shape. These aren't going to be perfect, but as long as you can get the general shape, it will be identifiable as a bird. I used masking tape to hold the packaging materials together and to give structure to the shape. You can also use the tape to create a sharp beak on the head, which is important for creating a bird shape. I did this by wrapping tape around the head and creating a triangle where the beak should be. I used more tape to create a flared shape for the tail. I made 4 birds and each one is a little different. I think the freeform nature of this project is part of its charm. Next, we're doing a paper mache technique to give the birds a little more structure so they won't collapse in when we add clay. Mix glue and water together until it's a thinner consistency. Then tear up pieces of tissue paper or whatever paper you have on hand. I used Mod Podge mixed with water and attached the tissue to the birds. The goal is to cover the whole bird in 1 to 2 layers of paper for structure, but if there are dents or misshapen areas, you can fill them in by layering paper in those spots and improving the overall shape. After I finished the first bird, I thought it might be a good idea to use some tissue paper I had that was a seafoam green color. We are going to paint these, but I thought having something already green underneath might enhance the look overall, and I think it was a good move. The tissue had an iridescent quality which I think gave a subtle sheen to the finished birds. I ended up doing the bottom layer with plain tissue and the top layer with the green tissue. Once you've got all the birds layered with tissue, let them dry. Now we're going to make filigree designs out of clay. I used the same air dry clay and some of the same molds as in the clay ornaments project. And you might have noticed these birds when I was painting those ornaments. It's definitely economical to do both these projects at the same time. To make the filigree, press bits of clay into the molds. And of course, you can use cornstarch to help release if you find your clay is sticking too much. Because these are filigree birds, we're focusing on delicate filigree shapes. It's really up to what you think looks best. Use the same glue and water mixture to attach the clay. You can also use the back of a paintbrush to slightly blend the clay into the birds. Overall, I found that using longer filigree shapes coming up from the bottom to the back of the bird worked well for mimicking wings, and rounder filigree shapes worked well on the tail. Other than that, fill in the bird with shapes until it's how you like it. Once it's finished, cover the whole thing with a layer of glue and water. Complete the rest of the birds and dry for 24 hours. To paint the birds, I used the same coastal sage paint that I used for the clay ornaments. I also used a French lilac purple color. I painted 2 birds green and 2 birds purple. Again, I do sort of like them as just one color, but I decided to mix the colors, so on the green birds I painted the filigrees purple, and vice versa on the purple birds. I thought they still needed a little something, so I went back in with some gold metallic paint and added a light coat of gold around the filigree edges. Let them dry. Now that the birds are done, it's time to turn them into chair hangers. I measured out 10 inches of aluminum craft wire for the hook. I bent the wire about 1 inch down from both the top and bottom, making sure the ends of the hook faced away from each other. I wrapped lavender ribbon around the wire by overlapping as I moved up the wire so it wouldn't be visible. I attached the ribbon at the bottom and top of the wire with a bit of hot glue. Next, we're going to attach the birds to 4-inch grapevine wreaths. I got mine from Amazon. To do this, hot glue the birds onto the bottom of the wreath. You can add faux lavender or other florals around the sides of the wreath. Hook the wreath and place on the back of your chairs for a charming and whimsical addition to your holiday decor. A paper cone garland is the next project. I struggled with what I wanted to do for a garland and ultimately decided on paper cones. I thought it would look pretty as a hung garland, but this image was the only example of a paper garland I could find. I liked how rustic it looked and thought it would fit in well with the French provincial theme. The next step in the design process was how I wanted the cones to look. The paper is an important element of the project, but I didn't have many good options for paper that would work within the color story. While I did have some purple paper from the paper ornaments, I didn't have any good options for green paper on hand. My mom has been experimenting with Adobe's Firefly AI image generator and developed these images for me to use in this project. I brought the base images she created into Canva and added other elements, including information on Plateau de Valensole, one of the most famous lavender fields in France, and Côte d'Azur, also known as the French Riviera, places that inspired this French provincial holiday theme. If you would like to use these images for this project, or any other project you might do in the future, you can go to our website to download the images for free. The link is in the description box. Anyway, you can make paper cones with whatever paper you have, but if you do want to follow along with the images we created, I printed out one set on photo paper and another set on plain paper. I glued both images together so that the cone would have color on the inside as well. I tried using a double-sided tape roller but found it wasn't strong enough and the paper would come apart. Mod Podge worked best for me, so I ended up painting an X shape with the glue and also along the edges of the paper to adhere the pages together. Then I cut along the edges of the paper with scalloped scissors to cut off the print border and to give some design to the cone. I found some small faux crystal ornaments lying around and thought it would add that touch of opulence if I hung them out from the bottom of the cones. Since I found them after I had taped the first cone together, it was a bit of a challenge to get the ornament to stay in there. I found the best way to attach the ornament is to pre-roll the cone to get an idea of where the bottom will be, then before gluing the cone together, use some tape to attach the ornament hook to the paper. Roll the cone inward from the right side. You can make it as thin or as wide as you want. Use Mod Podge to adhere the overlapping paper and hold for a few seconds until secure. Next, use a hole punch and punch out holes on the left and right side of the cone. String purple ribbon through one hole and tie a knot on the inside of the cone to secure the ribbon. Cut the ribbon to any length you want and then string through the other hole, tying a knot on the inside of the cone. I made my cones with varying ribbon lengths. I ended up stringing the finished cones on some fairy lights, which you can see in our French provincial vignette video. Our next project is a wreath. I really liked the pared back simplicity of this wreath I saw at Kirkland's for $49.99. I was drawn to the painted aspect and thought it would look really pretty in a seafoam color. I originally intended to build out a stand, but ultimately decided to hang the wreath from a mirror. To make the wreath, I'm using a 14-inch grapevine wreath from Amazon. I tied a purple ribbon at the top to hang the wreath from. For pine, I found a bag of pine needle picks at the thrift store and they were perfect for the pared back simplicity of this wreath. I found a similar product on Amazon which I will link in the description box. This wreath took me under 10 minutes to make. I simply placed the pine needles into the wreath form until the whole form was covered. The vine wreath held the picks securely so I didn't even need glue. After the wreath was filled out, I spray painted the wreath as well as a garland that I measured out to fit over the top of the mirror I'm hanging the wreath from. I used the same coastal sage as the other projects. To put the wreath together, I used glue tape to secure the garland on top of the mirror as well as the wreath. You can see more details about how to do this in our French Provincial vignette video, which is linked in the description box. With that, keep an eye out for the final part of this series, our French cookie flight. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Until next time, from all of us at Always Uttori, we wish you a safe and happy holiday season. Enchantment awaits. Life is just about finding it.